They say Chuck Norris died 20 years ago, but death doesn't have the courage to tell him. Chuck Norris can't lose weight because Chuck Norris never loses. When the boogeyman goes to sleep at night, it checks under the bed for Chuck Norris. You know how many push-ups Chuck Norris can do? All of them. No one knows if any of that is true, but believe me when I tell you that Chuck Norris once had his own television show canceled for having Chuck Norris in it. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos was a 5-episode animated series originally broadcast in the United States in September of 1986. That's Commandos with a K, because when Chuck Norris goes commando, you don't want to see it. It's clever.
Oh, okay. I was unaware, but... Okay.
All right, no, trust me. Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos stars Chuck Norris as Chuck Norris, the head of a secret United States government covert operations unit that doesn't actually require knowledge of karate. The Karate Commandos are a diverse selection of expert martial artists, brilliant engineers, cunning tacticians, and children. Tabe the sumo wrestler, Kimo the samurai, Pepper the tech and mechanical expert, Reed, Pepper's younger brother and Chuck Norris's apprentice, and finally, Too Much, a kid named Too Much. I don't know how to articulate to you that this kid's name, the kid on the team, does not have a name that is too much to say or that I'm overreacting to it. This person's name is literally Too Much. Chuck Norris can do a lot, but even Chuck Norris can't do everything at the same time. That's why he has his team of experts and specialists. Together they must protect the world from the evil forces of Vulture, led by a man named Claw, who has a giant mechanical arm, no doubt the origin of his evil moniker. Claw has recruited some of the most nefarious deed-doers from around the world, including the deadly Super Ninja, Angelfish, a woman, and a whole bunch of other ninjas. Each episode had a setup and close featuring live-action Chuck Norris himself. The segments, frequently interrupting a Chuck Norris workout or training session, are dispassionately delivered by a Chuck Norris who just cannot be bothered to memorize lines or hide his absolute disdain for the ritual. Because Chuck Norris's time is so valuable that 1 second with him feels like an eternity. Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos was created by Chuck Norris. That's not a Chuck Norris joke. That, again, is the actual truth. While a lot of the things you've heard about Chuck Norris are likely exaggerations, the reality is that no one is better at fabricating Chuck Norris stories than Chuck Norris. By 1986, Chuck Norris was already a world-renowned karate champion. He had served in the US Air Force for 4 years, founded a chain of martial arts schools, then turned to acting after developing a friendship with Bruce Lee, who was featured as Kato on the television series The Green Hornet. Chuck made his debut in 1969's The Wrecking Crew starring Dean Martin. His big acting break, the one that would catapult him to international recognition, was opposite Bruce Lee in 1972's Way of the Dragon, a film that climaxed with a duel between the two giants of martial arts and cinema. Chuck would appear in a handful of other films, but it wasn't until 1978 that the Chuck Norris American hero archetype would begin to take root. Chuck starred in Good Guys Wear Black, which not only centered his own performance, but was also independently produced and funded on the strength of his status as a karate champion. The assumption was that good or bad people would come out to see a movie starring Chuck Norris. Good Guys Wear Black shifted his status from that guy who got absolutely embarrassed by Bruce Lee to a new American martial arts hero set in America. He spent the next 7 years, 10 films playing characters with names like J.J. Lone Wolf McQuaid, Colonel James Braddock, and Matt Hunter, refining the Chuck Norris persona on and off screen. He signed a multiple picture deal with Cannon Films. His fame mirrored the Hollywood trajectories of other action stars like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Chuck Norris was so good at acting that he didn't become the characters became Chuck Norris. The point is, Chuck Norris had become a face that inspired kicking and punching, and somehow he had built up a considerable reputation for that with kids, especially when they went karate crazy after 1984's Karate Kid. Once again, on the strength of merely being Chuck Norris, Ruby Spears Enterprises began developing an animated series for him, similar to their Mr. T cartoon. Mr. T, another celebrity known for his ability to be tough and utterly beloved by kids. His animated series had been canceled after a run of 30 episodes from 1983 to 1985. This was Ruby Spears applying a similar formula to Chuck Norris to fill the void left by Mr. T. A cartoon was a common approach to expanding a celebrity's profile into the younger demographic, or just capitalizing on whatever the kids were into this year. Gary Coleman, the Jackson 5, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, heck, Sergeant Slaughter and Rambo hit cartoons the same year as Chuck Norris. In the years that followed, celebrities like Michael Jordan, MC Hammer, John Candy, they would all have cartoons built around their public pop culture persona.
Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos.
Break it up, crack it down, fight forces of evil wherever they're found.
Location Hong Kong Harbor. Assignment, locate smuggled warheads. Oh no, Ninja Warriors! Read 9 through 3, perfect strikes. Up next, Super Ninja. It was my karate against his. And theirs. Up for us, Chemo and the Karate Vet. A flip, a chop, a shot. This ball game was over now.
Kenner's Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. Products sold separate.
Instead of Mr. T traveling the world solving mysteries with the gymnastics team that he was coaching, Chuck Norris would travel the world fighting the forces of evil. The live-action setups and closing morality bookends lifted right from the production style of Mr. T. Chuck Norris was joined in the cast by animation veteran Kathy Garver as tech expert Pepper. Alan Skeletor Oppenheimer played Chemo, the samurai warrior. Robert Ito was Tabe, the sumo wrestler. Sam Fontana played Chuck's apprentice Reed. And Mona Marshall carried the burden of too much. Bill Martin was the Evil Claw. James Avery provided additional voices. Super Ninja was played by Keone Young, pulling double cartoon ninja duty. He was in his third year as Storm Shadow on G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. It was the 80s and ninjas were hot. As good guys, as bad guys, as turtles. The only thing that could top a ninja was another ninja. The design of the series featured some of the biggest names ever to impact pop culture through comics and illustration. Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, Alfredo Alcala, and Doug Wildey are all credited as creative consultants. Ain't that a kick in the head? 5 episodes were produced to test the strength of the premise. It was syndicated, sold to networks, and merchandise deals were made to both increase the public awareness of the brand and make some money on the marketability of Chuck Norris. Kenner produced a series of roughly 6-inch scale Karate Commando action figures, fully compatible with your A-Team, Knight Rider, and Rambo figures. Chuck Norris dominated the line with 3 different figures, each sporting a different outfit and action function. The Commandos drove around in Chuck's Karate Corvette, modeled after the 1986 Indy 500 pace car, tricked out with hood-mounted Onakamo blade, side-mounted Shinobi slicers, and rear-end trampoline spoiler. A second wave was planned, but the line didn't last long enough, depriving the world of the Karate Chopper helicopter, the Samurai Cycle, the Ninja Banzai motorcycle, new versions of Chuck and Chemo, new enemies like Night Fighter and Ninja Henchman, and proper representation of Vulture leader Claw himself. From January to July of 1987, Marvel Comics published 4 issues of Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos, written by Joe Duffy and Howard Mackey, with art by Al Nichols, Mike Esposito, John DiAgostino, Alex Saviuk, Sam De La Rosa, and Spider-Man co-creator Steve Ditko. The series was released under Marvel's Star Comics imprint, which is a subset of comics targeted at even younger kids than the regular comics that Marvel published. It also features properties based on existing cartoons or toy lines, contemporaries of Chuck Norris like Star Wars droids and Ewoks, Care Bears, Fraggle Rock, Heathcliff, Strawberry Shortcake, and Muppet Babies. The Karate Commandos found their way onto battery-operated toothbrushes, zipper clips, coloring books, sunglasses. You could deal out some damage with life-size role-play accessory weapon sets, or get under Chuck Norris's skin with the Ben Cooper Halloween costume. All 5 episodes were released on VHS by World Vision Home Video in 1987. The series hit DVD thanks to Warner Archive in April of 2011. You can also watch the entire series streaming for free on Tubi TV, and there are plenty of clips here on YouTube.com. Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos is not coming back. It was barely here to begin with. It's not going to be rebooted because there's nothing to reboot, because Chuck Norris didn't stop being Chuck Norris when the series ended. He played the same character in movies, on television, and in the real world for the next 30 years. In his book, The Encyclopedia of American Animated Television Shows, David Perlmutter wrote that Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos was, quote, a blatant exploitation of Norris's popularity among child audiences for whom it seemed the action-oriented narrative was directed. It was rather standard fare, save for the undoubtedly unintentional racism inherent in making the villains Asian people, as well as the public service announcements at the end where Norris unconvincingly asserted that violent acts of the kind featured in the program were my last option when it came to problem solving, end quote. Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos never made it past the 5 initial episodes. According to Chuck Norris himself, quote, we only did 5 of them, and then a woman at CBS said, those are too violent. I said, what do you mean they're too violent? Do you see what's on TV now? This is good guys versus bad guys. She said, yeah, but you're a real person, so it's too violent. End quote. Rambo wasn't Sylvester Stallone. Mr. T wasn't karate kicking ninjas off of platforms 50 feet in the air. Sergeant Slaughter was a professional wrestler, and even little baby children understand that that's all fake. The only mistake Chuck Norris made was blurring the line between fiction and reality. Kids knew Chuck Norris was real, so why wouldn't they believe him when he tells them that things got pretty tough down in Florida with the deadly dolphins? The networks were concerned that kids, like the rest of us, bought into Chuck Norris, the man, the myths, the legends, too much. The real Chuck Norris and the memes had become one, and Chuck Norris had no one to blame but Chuck Norris. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you haven't heard, we started streaming on Twitch. Find us twice a week at twitch.tv/ToyGalaxy. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon or become a YouTube channel member. Please share this video and let us know in the comments down below if you've ever seen the 5 episodes of Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos or if you had any of the toys. There were a lot of funny Chuck Norris meme jokes on the internet that I considered for inclusion in the open of this video. Ultimately, I wasn't able to find a place to work in my favorite. Everybody farts, but only Chuck Norris breaks wind.
Cut.